Welcome to Freethinking 101, a course unlike any you have taken before. We challenge you to examine your beliefs, values, judgments, your mindset, your biases and prejudices, your religion, your philosophy. In short, to examine the recesses of your mind and defend the cobwebs you store in that belfry. Freethinking 101 is brought to you by the Rationalist Society of St. Louis. I'm Steve Best, a member of the Society. Tonight we have Barbara Stocker, Vice President of the Rationalist Society. Barbara is going to share some of her experiences in going public as an atheist.
Thank you, Steve.
Barbara, in using the phrase going public, you make it sound as though it's a difficult thing to do. Do people have some trauma in being open about non-belief?
I think very definitely, Steve. I certainly did. In fact, it took me the largest part of my lifetime to just be able to say in public, I am an atheist. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is there's a very hostile world out there. A lot of people are very hostile towards atheists, and you can tell that if you listen in on call-in shows. You know, they'll say, call me atheists, or on letters to the editor, they often take a beating. I personally was called mean-spirited in a letter to the editor.
Oh, you're not mean-spirited.
Well, I know that, but the public doesn't know that, Steve. And a lot of people they don't even know they know atheists because people don't say I'm an atheist. And the believers will say, well, I don't know any atheists. Everybody believes in God. So in a way, it's a vicious circle. People won't say they're atheists because they feel the world is hostile to them, and the world stays hostile because they don't know any nice atheists. Nobody has come forward and said, I'm a nice atheist. Mm-hmm. And I think, and certainly it's in the interest of the churches, too, to not do anything about this situation. It plays right into their way of thinking. They don't want people bolting the fold. So, atheists are not perceived well, and it's a difficult thing for people. People have said, "Oh, I admire you for being able to do that," privately, but then they don't do it.
Yeah.
So that's the situation.
Yeah. How did you first become an atheist?
I've got to go way, way back, Steve, to where my memory is very, very dim.
About age 2 or 3, maybe.
Somewhere back there, because I was never indoctrinated in a religion the way a lot of people are. I wasn't indoctrinated the other way either. It was just very much left open for me. And when I began to know other children and found out that they believed this thing, well, it seemed kind of okay, or I just accepted it, I guess the way you accept anything, without getting fully involved in it. It was just something that existed, and so...
That's being an atheist was what you accepted and just naturally.
I don't think I took a stand one way or the other for a long time. We're all born atheists. And I pretty much stayed that way with some speculation, I guess.
Yeah, you were just brought up wrong or something. What were the religious views of your family?
We were, I think, a very different family in that respect, that we didn't discuss religion very much at all. I think my father was at some level a believer, but he hated church. He wouldn't set foot in a church. So his views, I think, were very, very private. I think my mother was a closet atheist.
Yeah.
She wasn't, she didn't push her views on me, but she was very skeptical in all areas. She was skeptical of all kinds of paranormal claims like astrology and ESP, and those views she didn't mind sharing.
Yeah.
But she didn't want to talk about religion either. Now my grandparents were religious on both sides. And when I visited, I would go to church with them. And we lived with my mother's parents for a time when I was about 7. And during that time, I went to church pretty regularly. But somehow it didn't. The meaning of it didn't sink
wash off
into
on
me.
you.
No, not really.
Yeah. Sounds like your father might have been a deist, something of that sort.
Quite possibly. I know he didn't believe that God personally took control of his life or anything like that. So he very well could have been.
When you were a child, did you have any problem relating to other children? You know, they were the ones that were believers or whatever that was to children at the time.
In most of my relationships, the topic of religion didn't come up very much. But when it did, I tried to accept their beliefs. And as I got a little bit older, I was the one who tried to go to church and tried to understand this and tried very, very hard to accept it. And pretended to for a long time, and just kind of adopted the role. But at some level, I was still skeptical. Kind of a whole lot like Santa Claus. I can remember doubting Santa Claus at a very, very early age.
I bet you don't believe in the Easter Bunny either.
No. But I was reluctant to ask my parents about Santa Claus. You know, I just kind of held on to pretending to believe there. And finally, when they leveled with me, I was very much relieved. You know, kind of, it's about time you told me that.
Sounds like you were born skeptical.
Do you think some people are born skeptical?
I don't know.
Is it genes, or is it training, or is it some kind of both?
Not sure. But it does sound also like you were doing some sociological investigating at the time, finding out what religion is about.
Well, I tried to. I know that it wasn't particularly. I remember trying to think about it, and one thing that I was very baffled about was the concept of prayer. And at first I thought, well, you're supposed to pray for something, and you get it. If you want a new bicycle, you pray for a bicycle, and why? A bicycle pops up. Well, obviously that doesn't work. So
other people steal one if they can't get one otherwise.
So what they tell you, well, if it's God's will that you should have a bicycle, then you get a bicycle. So if God's doing the deciding anyway, why should you bother to pray for this? That doesn't make any sense. So then you're told to pray for others. Of course, that's the same thing. If somebody's sick and you pray for them and they get well, that's fine. If they don't get well, that's God's will. No, that's God's will, and He wins no matter what.
Yeah.
So this thing was obviously not working the way it was supposed to.
It sounds like this religion is pretty deterministic, the way you're describing it. It gets you going or coming or going.
Exactly, yeah.
Well, when did you first come to terms with this atheism of yours? And when did you first start calling it by that term?
Probably mid to late teens, I started doing that. I still thought, you know, you have the perception out there that religion is the so-called right thing to do. And I think this is why I tried so very hard to go along with it. And somewhere along here, you know, after all this time, if I was still doubting, maybe I was the one that was right. Maybe there wasn't something wrong with me that I couldn't believe. You know, when you see everybody else believing, and you're different, it kind of comes across.
Did you have a feeling that you were different?
Yeah, very much.
At what age did you first think you were feeling different?
Probably mid to late teens.
Okay.
And I remember, I guess it was in college, one of the boys I was dating, I confided to him that I wasn't a believer, and he thought this was pretty bad, and I remember him bringing me this book that told about all the scientists and how they believed, and therefore the conclusion was I should believe too. And I remember I read this book, and I still thought, well, these are smart people, but
how could they be so wrong?
Their believing doesn't change my mind. It doesn't change the way I see the world. So Tommy didn't change me.
Yeah.
And try as I might, this is just the way I was, and this is the way my mind worked. And after examining it long enough, I began to think, hey, maybe I am right.
Did you run into any boyfriends that thought the way you did?
After a time, eventually I did.
Yeah, you had to look pretty long and hard.
You really did.
Yeah, that's true. Did you feel a loss in giving up religion? That's an odd question because it sounds like you never had it before.
I don't think I personally had it, at least not to any depth. But I know a lot of people really do feel a loss when they give up religion. These are the people who believed it. A lot of them were very, very much into it and believed very strongly and very seriously. And somewhere along the line, they begin to doubt. And I think that the doubt grows with them, and they do feel a loss. They feel like they're giving up some place to turn. If their friends and family still believe, it creates a serious rift there. Yeah. Often to the point where husbands and wives have to split up. It can cause that. And in a lot of cases, ministers and priests have realized they no longer believe. And in cases like that, they actually need to give up their livelihood. And when you're trained and do something well, as a lot of them I'm sure did, that's incredibly traumatic. They sometimes have to start their lives over.
That's what you would call a leap of loss of faith. Yeah, it can be. I understand some people, some experience happens to them, and traumatically they lose faith because what should not have happened did happen, and they can't buy the argument that it's God's will.
Yeah.
And for some people, it's a very traumatic kind of thing, and they are at a loss. But this has not been a problem for you.
No. Okay. And I think over time, these people do adjust to it, and I think as you become more and more familiar with free thought, particularly organized free thought, and get into it and know the people and begin to examine the philosophies behind it, it's incredibly positive. It's very positive for me. I don't see how religion could be as positive as I find free thought.
Yeah, I concur in that completely. How did you handle the religious education of your children?
Actually, I think I handled it pretty badly. Similarly to the way I was brought up, I ignored it. I did not give my children religious training one way or the other, probably because I was still in this void myself, not knowing which way to turn. I still had the society perception of good, but no way to pass on something that I didn't believe on. I wasn't sure if they would want to take on the stigma of atheism, actually. So I left it pretty much to happen the way it would. Occasionally one of my children would go to church or Sunday school with another child, but none of them kept it up very much. Today they're free thinkers, and they're happy with that. The one thing they miss, I think, is knowing some of the background, being able to converse about Bible stories. It's still part of our culture to know that, and I think that's the one thing they miss. And I got more of that than they did.
Yeah, I got a lot of that too, going to Sunday school and all that, and going to summer Bible school.
Oh, I did that too.
And all that sort of thing. So, the hymn singing and all that, although I don't usually sing hymns, or I didn't. So there's that bit of our backgrounds that your children don't have. And my children went to the ethical Sunday school, ethical culture Sunday school. So at least we started them in the right direction. I think it worked out pretty well for them.
Good.
Even knowing you didn't believe in religion, you were reluctant to go public, I understand. And how did you resolve that kind of problem?
Well, as I said, I think earlier, it's difficult in the face of a hostile public
Yeah.
to say, hey, I belong to this minority group that you don't like. And but I didn't feel quite honest not saying it and just kind of hiding it and not saying anything at all. And I remember one time, and this was only a few years ago, that I was with a group. This was a carpool that I rode to work with, and one of the women said that she was an atheist, and I thought, gee, that's great. But you know what I did? I did not say I am too.
Oh.
Even when I saw they didn't say anything nasty to her or anything, I still couldn't say that I was.
You were tongue-tied.
That bothered me that I wasn't able to do that.
And this was only a few years ago.
This was maybe 10 years ago, not that long ago.
Yeah.
So it was hard for a long time for me.
One question I thought of earlier, but we went on to something else, but how about your husband? What are his views, and how did that relate to religious education of the children and so on?
Well, I was divorced from my first husband, and he was religious, but I was divorced when the children were small. So at least I didn't have that conflict.
Yeah.
I was happy to be able to do that by myself and not have the conflict.
Okay. How has your going out in the open with this, how has that worked out for you?
Well, nobody has been openly nasty to me, and which kind of surprised me. I thought I was prepared for a few hostile remarks. What they say behind my back, I don't know. And as I say, I got some hostility out of the newspaper. But most people I find are at least understanding and willing to accept an alternative point of view. At least when they're with me, they are.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have been very positive. We've been able to have some discussions. One thing I'm finding out that everybody is not quite as solidly religious as they may appear.
Yeah.
There are a lot of doubters out there, a lot of them going to church on Sunday, and they're having doubts, and they're in various stages. And I think if we can say to these people, hey, it's not so bad to not be a believer, that maybe they won't fight so hard when the doubts creep in. And I would like to be able to reach those people. And if more people do come forward with unbelief, I think it'll in turn make the image of atheists a whole lot better.
It could
because
snowball.
they're very nice people. I've met nothing but nice people in the free thought movement. They're intelligent, vital people who are doing things and involved and happy people. So I've just been pleased with who I've met and how it's worked out for me.
I think in part it depends upon your attitude and how you present yourself. I know of another woman who was the neighborhood atheist, if you want to use that term, and all she did was stir up conflict. And she was very outspoken. You know, at every opportunity she would tell her life story and how she became an atheist and so on and so forth. And I think the amount of repetition wore people out.
Oh, I'm sure it could.
And she presented herself in such a way that she gave the term a real negative kind of effect, I guess you might call it.
Yeah. I can see how that would happen.
Yeah.
Because there are still that kind of personality types, I think, on both sides of it. Because
do you find yourself at any point challenging other people who are believers?
I would like to. I'm still not real comfortable doing that. I maybe sometimes gently question them as to why they believe, but I don't want to go nose to nose with these people. You very seldom change their minds. I think it comes from a lot more thoughtful reflection than
I was wondering how going door to door and being evangelistic like Jehovah's Witnesses might appeal to you.
Probably not to the Jehovah's Witnesses.
If you had someone to go with you, you go in couples.
Well, do they appeal to you? Do you think they make a lot of converts?
I don't know. I really don't know.
I don't know that either.
I don't know if they've kept track. I know at the Ethical Society I've mentioned to some of the members that we should do an experiment. We should, perhaps 100 of our members should make 100 house calls, like the Jehovah's
just at
Witnesses.
Random cold calls here.
Yeah, randomly selected, and see how it works out, and see what reaction the people that they talk to, what reaction they have. And everyone's turned me down cold on this idea. So I think there's something to the idea that people with liberal religions or with atheist inclinations or whatever don't really want to get out and shout it from the housetops. And maybe that's not right. Maybe they should do that.
Maybe there should be some promotion. Maybe we are intimidated by the perceptions.
Maybe we should
of
think
society.
about it anyway. Well, what benefits have you found from becoming a free thinker?
Boy, I think I've gone over a lot of them. I've mentioned the nice people that I've met, and I've been able to go to some national conventions, and I've met people from all over the country that are doing things. And I met a woman from San Antonio in Madison a couple years ago. So recently I went to San Antonio and was able to look her up.
Oh, very good.
Yeah, we went out to lunch and had a delightful conversation. That was a very nice thing
I
to do.
was down in San Antonio, last few days, and I forgot to take her phone number with me and all that. I was going to give her a call.
Oh.
Well, I'm sorry, but that's one thing I had
too bad.
planned to do but didn't remember.
Another thing I've been able to do is I've done a lot of reading in the area of humanism, free thought, rationalism, eupraxiphy, and have been able to solidify my own philosophy a whole lot better, and to know why I believe what I believe or don't believe what I don't believe, as the case may be, and been able to explore what other people think and compare notes. And I think that has been a very positive benefit for me, and put me on a more solid footing in my own mind about who I am and where I'm going, and that feels good. I enjoy that.
It's unlike the people that are religious but are questioning, and they're sort of floating in midair, whereas you have your feet solidly on the ground.
When you're given, you believe this, the way the religion does, it doesn't give you that opportunity to question.
Yeah.
And I think when you do arrive at something that way, it's just a lot more solid.
Yeah. Have you had any real negative experiences from any other people? Anything that you can recall?
Not too much. I have a shirt that it says "I'm your friendly neighborhood atheist" on it.
I was wondering about the reaction you get from people.
I get both kinds of reactions. some people say, "Oh, that's neat. Where did you get it?"
Yeah.
I really like that. And then some people will, you see
Look
them
askance.
looking at you and they avert their eyes, like it's something going to hurt their eyes if they read that awful word. But it's interesting too.
I had an interesting experience. I was checking into a local hospital, and I was in an experiment there, and I had to check in for overnight. And the receptionist was filling out a questionnaire, and she asked me my religion. I said atheist, and she was really startled. And she started out to say, "Oh, I've never really met," and then she stopped, realized what she was saying, but she was friendly about it. So I guess you run into experiences like that from time to time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you had your life to live over again,
I'd have done it sooner.
you'd have done it. I was going to ask you what changes you might have made.
Yeah, I wouldn't have been so intimidated. I'd have tried to realize, hey, I'd have tried to meet other atheists. I think the idea that there are other people, there are organizations. I think being alone and not knowing others was a problem for a long, long time.
Yeah, I think maybe we need to get the word out more.
I think we do, Steve.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do here with Freethinking 101. So maybe some of our viewers will give us a call, drop us a note.
Yeah, that comes just at the right point, because this is time to wind things up. And those of you in the audience, the watching audience, if you would like to get in touch with us, our mailing address is Rationalist Society, Box 2931, St. Louis, Missouri 63130. We would like to hear from you, your comments about atheism or any other subjects you would like us to deal with on this program. Anything we can be of help to you, we would like to do that. Thank you very much, Barbara, for sharing.
Thank you, Steve. I
these.
enjoyed it very much.
Okay.